Hello, my name is Mike Berman. I'm the head of curriculum development for TenMarks, and I'm excited to share with you a new resource our team has developed, the TenMarks Pacing Guides, that are designed to help support an effective implementation of TenMarks math in the upcoming year. This webinar is going to give an overview of the pacing guides, why they were designed, and their major components. We'll talk about the development process, as well as some considerations and recommendations for effective implementation in the upcoming academic year. These pacing guides were developed based on the input from our customers. We listened to teachers and leaders who asked us for our recommendations on the sequencing of the standards in a coherent way that would help students develop conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and the mathematical practices. They were looking for our stake in the ground, and so these pacing guides are an attempt to provide that perspective. They also told us that they really appreciated the various components of TenMarks, but they were looking for some guidance on how to put those elements together in the most coherent, effective way to maximize student learning. So these pacing guides are our attempt to provide a coherent set of recommendations, a vision that's going to allow students to build conceptual understanding and their knowledge of the standards throughout the course of an academic year. The pacing guides are each divided into two chunks, and I should just mention that we have created pacing guides for all of our courses, from first grade up through our high school courses. Let me bring you into an example of our fifth grade so you can see these major components and what they look like. All of these documents start with an overview, just to describe the various elements of the pacing guide and the rationale behind them. I should also provide a caveat or a reminder that these pacing guides represent our recommendations and some guidance that was thoughtfully crafted and based on research and a lot of time and energy on our parts. At the same time, it is you, the teachers, and the instructional leaders who will make decisions about the selection and sequencing of TenMarks content. So please remember that these are our recommendations, but ultimately it's going to be your discretion that will decide on how these resources are used. The year at a glance provides an overview for the entire school year. So you can see that in grade 5, we've chunked the content into 11 units. I'll scroll down so you can see. And each unit just provides a brief overview of the different component parts, the key ideas that are addressed and developed during that unit, a recommendation for the projected amount of time we predict that it would take to move through that content, as well as the key standards that are addressed during that component of the curriculum. I'll scroll down and you can see that there are 11 units. The number of units varies grade by grade. Some have 8 units and some have as many as 13. Let's look at the unit plan. So this is for Unit 1. You can see that there's an overview description that describes the key ideas and concepts that are developed during this particular unit. We also try to place the learning in context. So we talk about what are the prerequisite skills and what follows after it. What are the learning objectives designed to promote later on in the school year? We have some essential questions as well as some recommended timing. An overview of a unit part goes one grain size smaller to provide some day-by-day guidance. And you can see there's some recommendations for where you might teach or when you might teach some of the lessons, what you might select, as well as recommendations for which assignments you might want to select, how to sequence them, and finally, where the standard level assessments might be leveraged or administered to check for student understanding and the level of mastery that you've achieved. Finally, the learning objectives are articulated for each particular day. They're mapped to the different components of the curriculum. I want to talk a little bit about the design process that went into developing these resources. The pacing guides, just like all of our content, we started with the standards. We wanted to look at what's the major work of the grade and how can it be sequenced in a way that maximizes focus and coherence and the intention of the standards. Along those lines, we mapped our work according to some of the leading research institutions and some of the authors of the Common Core, what their perspective is on the best way to sequence and order concepts and skills according to the standards. So we looked at student achievement partners, as well as Bill McCallum's work at University of Arizona, the Dana Center in UT Austin, as well as the educators and the researchers at NC State. We wanted to make sure that our resources were also grounded in practice. So in addition to looking at some of the key theoretical underpinnings of the standards, we also looked at state, county, and district offices of education and the pacing guides that they had produced to make sure that our sequencing was practically viable and validated by some of the leading education organizations and districts across the country. And finally, we wanted to make sure that there was a level of internal coherence within our own recommendations. So we looked at the content trajectories that the content team has developed and made sure that the year-long pacing guides mapped to that and helped students develop and build on skills throughout the course of the year. All that went into developing these resources. We also wanted to make sure that they were flexible as possible. As we said, they're recommendations, but we wanted to make sure that any of our customers, any of our teachers could effectively leverage these resources to maximize impact. So whether you use TenMarks as your daily instructional resource and you're trying to understand how to best put all these different components together, or you use it as a complement to your core resource. The pacing guides are intended as a way for you to map your entire year so that there's a clear learning trajectory for your students. When you're implementing anything in your school or your district, it's important to have a level of planning and foresight into what it is you intend to do and what are your goals. And this is the case for our pacing guides. It's a case for any new initiative or any new resource you're going to implement. Just best practice. So just thinking about the vision, how will the pacing guides be used in your schools and in your classrooms? If you're a teacher, what are your expectations for how you're going to use them and your colleagues? What is going to be your planning process? If you're an administrator, I think it's important to think about how you expect your teachers to leverage these documents. And how are your building leaders, whether it's math coaches or administrators, going to support your teachers? If you've thought about these expectations, I think it's really important to understand how they're going to be communicated. By whom? When are these expectations and the implementation model going to be communicated to the various stakeholders within your system? And really importantly, monitoring and supporting your progress. How are we going to ensure that teachers and leaders are following through on the plans that we have? And then who from your system is going to provide that support? Whether you have math leaders or lead teachers, instructional coaches, teachers on special assignment, or administrators, how is that support going to be provided in concrete ways? When is it going to be provided? And how are we mapping it back to measuring our success? How is that success going to be defined? What are the criteria? All those are really important considerations when you're implementing anything new, and the pacing guides are no exception to that. We're really pleased to provide you with these new resources. We're excited to see the ways that you're going to put them into practice in your classrooms, and we're also excited to hear from you what the outcomes are. At the same time, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us for support. The support team is always interested in providing clarification on these resources. And then we'll also post guidance and some background information on the help desk at TenMarks. Thanks again for your partnership, and good luck in the school year.